Hey guys, it's me Elisabeth. Welcome back to another reading wrap-up. This is a wrap-up for the month of February and March combined because I apparently didn't do one of these in February. It's fine, we're doing it now. I have a lot of books to go through. I read about 6 books in February and 7 books in March, which is actually really impressive because I feel like this year I've been doing really good with reading. The first book I read in February was Stephen King's The Gunslinger, Dark Tower #1. I did listen to an audiobook for this and I did enjoy this. I've heard some people say, or a lot of people say, that they're absolutely obsessed with these books. This is one of the best series they've ever read and blah blah blah. I enjoyed book 1. I thought it was good, but it wasn't the best thing I ever read. So I'm hoping the rest of the series gets even better. I like this. It was a good book, but I feel like I was just a tiny bit let down because I was expecting this to be the best thing in the universe, and it wasn't. It was really good. It just wasn't the best thing in the universe, and so that's what kind of, let me down just a little bit. I was expecting this is going to be the most amazing thing ever, because that's what everyone talks about when they talk about the Dark Tower series. And it was just good. It was just maybe a solid 4 stars. But it wasn't anything higher than that. And I was kind of expecting it to be higher than that because of the way people talk about the series. So I am planning to continue the series. I did like the book. It was really, obviously I gave it 4 stars. But I'm hoping the rest of the series gets better because that's just what I'm expecting by the way everyone reacts to this series. You know, everyone acts like this is one of the best series they've ever read. Stephen King is the man. This is the best series ever. And it's a good book, but I'm not getting that from book 1. You know what I mean? So I definitely enjoyed this. This is definitely a really good book. Stephen King is definitely an amazing writer. It just wasn't the best book I've ever read. So hopefully the other books fall into that category. But I definitely enjoyed book 1, and I can't wait to get on to book 2 whenever I get off my book buying ban. Next, we have one of the best books I have read this year, and I'm just obsessed with the series, and I finished what's out of the series. It's going to be one more book, and this just makes me so excited and so happy, and that is Lightbringer by Pierce Brown. Oh my gosh. Just looking at this cover, I'm obsessed with the Red Rising Saga covers. I just think they're so cool looking, and I'm obsessed with Pierce Brown, and this book is just it's so good. Obviously, this is a 6-star read. Pierce Brown, okay, besides Iron Gold, because we all know how that went, besides Iron Gold, all of the Pierce Brown books are 6 stars. You can't tell me that his books are absolutely phenomenal. I'm obsessed. I love it. This was so good. And I'm excited for book 7 whenever that comes out. I think it's possibly coming out in 2024, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know a whole lot about that. But I just know that this was amazing. Yeah. All of these books are utterly amazing. Obviously, like I said, Iron Gold is a little bit downhill. There's some major issues with that book. But overall, this whole entire saga is insane. Love it. I'm obsessed. Pierce Brown. This is one of my favorite series of all time. 6 stars. Love this book. Loved it. And all I want to do, quite literally, is reread Red Rising and all the books. All I want to do is reread this. I want to reread all of the books so badly because they're just so good. So next, I read book 2 in the Tai Chai trilogy, Call of the Bone Shapes by R.J. Barker. This is a modern fantasy trilogy. I'm reading this because of Library of a Viking. Let's be for real right now. I read book 1 last year and really enjoyed it, and read book 2 this year. I listened to the audiobook for this one as well. So far, all of the books I mentioned I have listened to on audio because apparently that's how I roll. But I did really enjoy this. I had a good time. I think I give this 4 stars. I like these books so far. They're really good. But it's not my most favorite thing ever. They're nice, good, solid 4 stars. Pretty great series. Definitely would recommend. And these covers are absolutely stunning. And the spines all together are also stunning. Next, we have Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I am in my reading everything by Sanderson that's ever existed era. I've already been slowly getting through Sanderson and stuff like that, but I've really this year been going really all in and just reading Sanderson after Sanderson after Sanderson. So I read Warbreaker, and when I started this book, I was a little bit worried because I was like, it's kind of slow. It didn't feel like, I wasn't super invested at the very beginning. And then it got to a certain point, I don't even remember when, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is a Sanderson book and I'm obsessed. So definitely loved this book. I think I gave it 5 stars because it's a Sanderson. It's there's only one single book by Sanderson that I have not given a 5 stars at this point. So this is absolutely phenomenal. Loved it. Oh my gosh, this was so good. Next, I read a little short, tiny mini book called The Machine Stopped by E.M. Forster. This is a classic. I don't have the physical copy. I listened to it on audio as well. I think I listened to everything in February on audio, so there you go. But this is absolutely insane. This book was phenomenal. I think I gave this 5 stars because, yeah, I don't really know exactly how to describe this book, but this was written in the early 1900s or something like that. And that's insane. You just have to read it to understand, because I'm not going to be very good at explaining it, but it's insane to think that was created at that time. Then I listened to Mistborn, more Sanderson. You'll see a theme with all the books I've read in February and March, because there's a bunch of Sanderson books. But I read Mistborn, kind of technically a reread, but I listened to this one and actually retained everything I listened to. And holy crap, 5 stars, 6 stars, 6 stars. 5 stars, 6 stars, whatever. It's amazing. It's Sanderson. It's Mistborn. You don't need me to tell you much more, because you probably have already heard of this, and if you haven't, you must be living under a rock. But you've also probably already read this, because I feel like I'm very late to the game in this sense. But I'm very excited to get the book too. That is on my April TBR, so hopefully I actually get to it. But this was amazing. It is a Sanderson at this point. Sanderson can do no wrong, except for, there's one exception to that, but Sanderson can do no wrong at this point. So I don't know if you can tell, but I think I know my reading taste fairly decently well, that I'm just reading lots of books that are 5 stars and 4 stars, because I know what I like, and I know if I'm either starting a book or in the middle of a book that I think is going to be a 3 stars, or that I'm not going to like it very much, I usually just DNF it. And then I also just know what books I like in terms of genre and all of that stuff. And so when I'm getting books, or when I buy books or whatever, I'm usually buying books that I think I'll enjoy. And so most of the time I enjoy those books enough that they're 4 or 5 stars. I just know what I like, and I don't usually buy a ton of books that I don't know a ton. I buy a lot of the books I buy that I don't know a lot about, I end up just unhauling and never actually reading. But all of the books that I end up reading are books that I bought and knew that I was really interested in, and they end up just being really good because I know my book taste. So that's why all of these books are super highly rated, because I just know what I like, and I only read books that I know are going to be highly rated. Next, we have the best book I've read so far this year. This is my favorite book that I've read all year, the second being Lightbringer, of course. And this is another, 6-star read, of course, because it's the best one I've read. And that is Rhythm of War. I finally finished the Stormlight Archives, or what's out of it, and now I have to wait, not quite a year, but almost a year for book 5, which is actually very exciting, because book 5 is coming out in December. What? I feel like I don't have that long of a wait. Most people read this when it came out had to wait a lot longer than I did, so I didn't have that long of a wait at all, and I'm so excited for December. I'm so excited for book 5. I just have to say, this book series is absolutely insane. Let me tell you, I just want to tell you a little bit of a quick story about this series. Basically, this series is absolutely amazing. It's basically my third favorite series of all time. I'm obsessed with this. I love it. It is insane. And I was like, my brother is going to love this series. I'm like, he needs to read this. So I kept telling him, you need to read this book. You need to read this series. I know they're all like over 1,000 pages, but you need to read this. You need to read this. And he kept saying, it's too long, and if this book isn't out yet, blah, blah. He kept giving me excuses. And then finally, he picked it up. And guess what? It's like a couple months later. He's already read the entire book, all 4 books, and one of the novellas. And it's his favorite series of all time. He's absolutely obsessed with it, and he keeps telling everyone he sees in our family to read it. And he's convinced my other brother to read it, and my other brother is on like book 2 now. He's convinced my mom to read it, and she's on book 1. And he's convinced my sister to read it, and she's started, or has book 1. I don't think she started it yet because she was reading something else. But like, yeah. And it took him forever from my recommendation to finally read it, and now he's like absolutely obsessed. So that just goes to show that this is a good series, and I love giant books. What can I say? I know a lot of people are intimidated because these books are thousands of pages long, but I actually and legitimately am not joking when I say that I love giant books. Do they take me forever to read? Yes. But do I love giant books? Yes. A lot of people are really intimidated by giant books. I personally actually legitimately love when books are giant. Unless they're like a terrible book or something, but if it's like a decent book, I love when books are giant. I just do. Also, Rhythm of War was the first book that I listened to on audio in the month of March. The next book that I also listened to on audio was The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. That is a huge mouthful, and that is also a book by Brandon Sanderson. It is book 2 in his secret project that he put out last year. And this one, I think I gave this like either a 3 stars or 4 stars. I don't remember my exact rating, but essentially I didn't like this one nearly as much as I like all of other Sanderson's books. This one, I feel like I might have initially given this 4 stars. I didn't dislike it by any means, but it kind of fell flat, especially for a Sanderson book. The concept was amazing. Basically, this guy time travels. It's not really time travel, but he basically gets this world, and it's Time Traveler's Guide to Medieval England, so he is time traveling, but he goes to medieval England, but it's not actually in the past. It's its own separate world. And he has to navigate this place when he gets there, he has no memory of who the heck he is or anything about himself. So it's kind of like a Bourne situation where he's like memory loss type thing. And he just has a bunch of these papers and stuff, and he's trying to figure out why he's there and all this stuff. And it was definitely interesting. I feel like I didn't dislike it as much as most people did. A lot of people just really didn't care for this book or weren't a huge fan of it. Whilst I would say so far this is my least favorite Sanderson I've read, and I didn't absolutely love it, I still had a fun time, roughly. I still would say, try it out if you wish, but it's not nearly as good as his other books. And I enjoyed it because I just love Sanderson, and it was a fun time, but it wasn't amazing. It was just kind of fell flat a little bit. So I guess I would only recommend this to those people who are absolute Sanderson fans and want to read everything he's written. If you're not an absolute Sanderson fan, maybe try something else of his, because this one does fall a little bit flat. And next, I finally finished my read of Lies Are Quoted by Ella Montgomery. I started this in October of last year, and I read about half the book, or something. I got like maybe like this far, and then I finished this in March. And as you can see, I annotated the crap out of this book. And this is a 5 stars. This is a 6 stars. This is Ella Montgomery. Ella Montgomery is one of my favorite authors. I am absolutely obsessed with everything she writes. And so this is definitely really high up there. Annotated the crap out of this book, and all of the poems in here are just absolutely amazing. I love rereading the poems in here because they are just the best thing on the planet, and I love everything by Ella Montgomery. This poem is very meaningful if you have read the Anne of Green Gables books. But yeah, this was absolutely phenomenal. Next, I finished reading this book by Jane Austen. This is a bunch of short stories. Lady Susan, the Watsons, and Sanderson. So technically, I read Lady Susan and the Watsons in February. Right? In February? I don't know. I read some of this in February, I believe, and then I read the rest of it in March, or maybe I read all of this in March. I honestly, what is time? I don't know. I can't remember. But either way, I read this year, and I finished Sanditon in March. I don't remember if I read these in February or March, because my brain is that old or something, I don't know. But I had a fun time. This was definitely a fun, good short story collection of Jane Austen. I didn't absolutely love it. I got a little bit bored in, I want to say Sanditon. I got a little bit bored in Sanditon. I don't know. So I had fun, but at the same time, it wasn't the most amazing Jane Austen book I've ever read. So I think I gave this 4 stars. It was definitely a good book. I would definitely recommend if you're an Austen fan. If you're not an Austen fan, or if you haven't read anything by Austen, I definitely would pick up some of her other stuff first. But these were fun. These were short stories, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. Next, I read an absolutely amazing book. I feel like everything I read is like 5 stars, and that's just, I can't help it. I know what I like, and so everything I read is just that good. Maybe that's bad. Maybe that's a bad thing. And I think because I have officially changed my rating. I was originally doing the Call Pile rating system, but I changed it to just normal ratings with like 0.5s and 0.75s. I think I gave this 5 stars on my story graph. I think if I was rating it now, I'd give it a 4.75. I don't remember what I gave it on my story graph, but I'm going to say this book is a 4.75, and I read The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is a really, really popular trilogy that all the people on the internet are really into, and I have seen this everywhere, and for some reason, I was looking at this on the story graph and thinking, this actually looks kind of intriguing, and so I've had it on my shelves for like half a year or something, and I was like, I put it on my March TBR. It got on my March TBR because my Harry TBR there, and I was like, I'm gonna finally read this and just see what it's like. I wasn't expecting anything like absolutely amazing. I was just, kind of thinking it would be a fun time. I loved the heck out of this book. This book has such short chapters. It is insane. It's such a It is such a fast-paced book. It was so good. The chapters were so short. When I say they were so short, like, they were 3 to 6 pages long. And every time, like, when I read a book, I'm one of those people who just stops. As long as the paragraph ends at the end of a page, I will just stop in the middle of a chapter or wherever. I don't care. As long as I can stop at the end of a page, I will stop. And sometimes I will even not stop at the end of a page if I'm that crazy. But I'm not one of those people who has to stop at the end of a chapter. But when reading this, I was like, I'm just going to finish this chapter. I'm just going to finish the next chapter. And I just kept reading it and kept reading it and kept reading it because the chapters were just so short. It was so easy to get to the next chapter. I'd be reading it and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to be done soon. So then I'd be like, I'm just going to finish this chapter. There's like 2 more pages left. And then I get to the end of the chapter, whereas usually I would just stop in the middle of a chapter because I want to be done. Or I would just sit there and I'd be like, this chapter's super short, I'm gonna finish this chapter. And then I'd be like, okay, no. And then I'd be like so engrossed, and then I'd finish. Like, I'd just keep reading this. This was so fast paced, and I loved the story. It's so much fun. Basically, we're following this girl. What's her name? Avery. Avery is, she's just this normal person. She doesn't have, her life isn't going so great. She goes to school, and she also has a job, and like she lives with her sister, but it's not going so great. And then all of a sudden, this guy shows up at her school, and he's like, "You're in the will of my grandfather." And this guy is like this kid technically is like a rich dude, and his grandfather is like a billionaire. And so she ends up flying out to wherever they live. I forget. It might be Texas or something. And, what do you know? This guy left her his entire everything. Basically, his entire estate and inheritance, everything in the will he left to this girl, Avery. And she's like, I don't know who you people are. Why am I inheriting this? What is happening? And there's so much, like, it's a mystery, and there's puzzles, and it's so good. And then there's 4 Hawthorne brothers. The Hawthorne brothers, there's 3 that are really prominent throughout the book. And I don't know, it's so good. There's a little bit of a love thing happening as well, but like, it's really focused on the mystery. At least in this book, it's very focused on the mystery, and I loved this so much, and I cannot wait to read book 2. And I wish I wasn't on a book buying ban, because I really want to buy books 2 and 3 so I can read them. But like, I had a blast, and I also read this physically. Like, I ate this up. I just read this physically, and I just could not stop reading this. And I need the second book, like, now. But I also want to, like, wait until I can buy books, because I really want to read these all physically, because I ate these up physically, and I very specifically need to read these physically, because they were so fast to read physically. And I need to stop talking about this book now, but I loved this. Definitely would recommend. It is a YA, so be aware of that. But, like, I don't know why I love this so much, but I thought it was just so much fun. I had so much fun with this book. The next book that I read in the month of March was Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. What is that? My 5th Sanderson book of this year? Yeah, that's my 5th Sanderson book of the year. And I plan to read more, so it's gonna be a high Sanderson year for sure. But oh my gosh, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, absolutely insane. Basically, this is book 3 in the Sanderson Secret Project.